Hello, League of Women Voters, White Bear Lake area welcomes you to the virtual candidate forum for people running for the special election in Stillwater ISD 834 School Board. You will be electing 2 people for 2-year terms who will take office right after the election, I believe. This forum is not open to the public and is not being live streamed. It is being recorded and will be available on our League of Women Voters White Bear Lake area YouTube channel. In addition, local cable stations will replay this forum on a schedule that is determined by them. Candidates, if for some reason you lose your internet connection, please call in using your phone. I'm Mary Santee. I live outside the district in White Bear Township, and I will be moderating. League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization that encourages citizens to participate in government. While the League does study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or oppose any candidate or political party. The goal of our forums like this is for voters to learn more about the positions of candidates who will be on the ballot November 3rd. So all of the candidates are participating in this forum, and in alphabetical order, they are Tim Brewington, Joseph Erler, Bill Gilles, Beverly Petrie, Alison Sherman, and Roger Zeeman. Correct pronunciations on those?
It's Gillis.
Okay. So we will start with the opening statements, and as you've been told, they're 1.5 minutes on alphabetical order, and so we'll start that with Tim Brewington.
First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight and inviting me to participate in this forum. I'm a proud parent of twin girls that graduated from the high school in 2019. And I have a son with special needs who is currently enrolled in the district. I believe that the board should be a reflection of the diversity that exists in the community. By diversity, I don't just mean racial diversity, but I mean diversity of thought, experience, and perspective. Without diversity, we have blind spots on the board, and blind spots limit our ability to make well-informed decisions considering all of the consequences. I bring to the board my experience as a trusted community leader and advocate for students with special needs. More now than ever, we need a board that will listen to the community, learn from the experts, and has the courage to lead our district. If I'm elected to the board, I am committed to listen, to learn, and to lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next is Joe Erler.
Thank you, and thank you for the League of Women Voters for holding this forum. My name is Joe Ehrler. I am the step parent of 3 children who have all gone to Stillwater schools. 2 have graduated and moved on. 1 is going to be a sophomore this year. I have been involved with the school's speech and debate program for most of the time that my children have been involved in those programs also. I think what I can bring to the board is my education, which includes a master's in public administration and a law degree from William Mitchell, or Hamlin Mitchell Hamlin School of Law now. I believe that there is a fair amount of discord in the district that causes tension that does not help with the education of the children. So I believe that we need to take a step back and have a more moderate view of what's going on and make sure that we have the focus on education and be good stewards of the tax dollars that the district collects and spend them wisely and make sure that we utilize as much as we can for educational purposes.
Thank you. Time.
Thank you.
Can you see the screen with the timer person in the corner? She has a
I
50
cannot.
minute and a stop. You may finish a sentence. Next to go.
I'm fine. Sorry.
I don't mean to scold. Gillis.
Well, thank you, Mary, and I want to thank you and the League for hosting this forum tonight. I appreciate that the League has taken the effort and risk to create a virtual forum for us, so thank you for that. A little bit about myself. I am a small business owner, and before that I was a director of a nonprofit, and I've sat on a few boards as well. I also had the experience and exposure to K-12 education. I once had the opportunity to help launch a charter school in Minneapolis, where I helped hire the principal and a few key teachers, and organized several community forums where we recruited the incoming class. Regarding my education, I got my business degree at Carlson and my MBA at Notre Dame. But most importantly, I am the father of 3 young children who are just beginning in the schools. But there is a moment that pushed me from being a concerned parent to being a candidate. My oldest daughter, a 2nd grader, is having a real hard time learning how to read, and I couldn't understand it. I started asking my neighbors about their experience. I was shocked at how many were having similar issues. It was really confounding. Her teachers were highly competent and clearly cared about my daughter. And my daughter obviously adored her teachers and was so eager to please them. So what went wrong? I started looking into it and discovered our district uses balanced literacy. It teaches kids to look at pictures to gain context and memorize sight words and then phonics. That all sounds great, but when I read with my daughter, she spends a few seconds looking at the pictures and then picking out the sight words and then guessing the word she doesn't know. And then if all else fails, phonics. This is an incredibly slow process, but the worst part, the actual reading, the phonics, it's her last resort. This needs to change. We must do better, and that is why I'm running.
Thank you. Next up, Beverly Petrie.
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this. My late husband and I moved to this area about 30 years ago, and we raised 2 sons who went through Stillwater area public schools. They're leading very different lives these days. One is an artist who is actually making a living, and the other is a doctor in residency. I am absolutely convinced that they would not be where they are today without the excellent education they got through Stillwater area public schools and the moments that they spent with teachers and coaches who sort of set them on their path. I spent about 2 decades volunteering in various ways to make Stillwater area public schools the best it can be. I volunteered in the classrooms. I served on the board of directors of the partnership plan. I led a successful levy renewal effort and worked on several others. For 5 years, I was the executive director of the partnership plan. And in that role, I helped raise over $5 million, which was used for enrichment programs in Stillwater area public schools. I decided to run because, like many other people, I would really like to see change come to this board. I've been very distressed to see the discord and the rancor and the settling of scores that we have seen. And we are not really looking to the future and what's best for our students. I want for every student in Stillwater Public Schools to have what my sons have. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Next is Allison Sherman.
Hi, my name is Allison Sherman. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I live in Woodbury. I have 2 sons. One is in the 8th grade at St. Croix Prep, and the other is in 11th grade at Stillwater High School. We are active in debate. I serve on the boosters for debate, speech and debate at the high school, and we're avid orchestra family. So I'm running because I care about students. I see we have an opportunity to really put the students first in the decisions that we make. I think that the money, the limited resources that we have need to be spent responsibly and targeted in the classroom. And I see that we have an opportunity to really lead by example and listen collaboratively to all stakeholders throughout the district, especially including those who are traditionally underserved. And so for me, I'm in this for the students. I really am, I care deeply about our district, and so that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Roger Zeman.
Hey, thanks for letting me be here. Unlike most of the board candidates, I have not lived here for decades and decades, so I bring very little baggage to the table. My son-in-law is a teacher at Stillwater High School. My granddaughter is a junior at Stillwater High School. I have 35 plus years as a principal and school board member and teacher. I bring a fresh look to this position. I've been following the issues for years and years, and I look forward to making changes on the school board. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to questions. The questions were solicited on our League of Women Voters website or our email. After all the candidates have answered, you will have an opportunity to make a rebuttal. So we'll ask as many questions as possible in the time allotted. I'll pick the, it will be in a random order, and I'll name the person who's to go next and following. So I'll keep track of all that. So the first question will go first to Bill Gillis. And we'll just start with the question the whole town is talking about. The superintendent was bought out during a pandemic. What are your thoughts on how that has affected students, teachers, staff, and the community?
Well, I think we should address why we need a new superintendent. Needless to say, our last superintendent was a controversial figure. And this largely stemmed from the first big initiative to close 3 schools. That was a big, dare I say bold move on her part. For such a big move, the process, it felt rushed, the rationales were slippery, but most importantly, there was no buy-in from the community. Yet the superintendent plowed ahead and lost the trust of the community and the school board. So now we have an opportunity to bring in a new superintendent, and we're going to need someone who understands the community, who shares the vision of the board and the community, and is able to collaborate with the parents, teachers, and staff, and will submit the big changes to a slow, deliberative process that seeks community support instead of surprising the community.
Thank you. Next to go is Roger Zeman.
300,000 is a lot of money. And it was unfortunate that it had to take place. Let's remind ourselves that the former superintendent didn't close the schools. The school board did. They made the decision. And I don't think she was controversial. She had 81% support of the teachers and 100% support of the principals. It was a terrible situation, and Stillwater has to bear the reputation of not treating professionals as they should.
Thank you. Next to go is Allison Sherman.
Yes, it was the wrong time to even be considering making such a decision. We were in the midst of a pandemic. Our attention should have been fully focused on students and meeting the needs of those students and in giving our teachers the tools that they need to be successful in a very challenging and unprecedented situation. It was $300,000 plus when the former superintendent had a year left on her contract. Our resources, we just finished cutting $2.1 million to our operating budget. I would not, as a board member, have been able to justify $300,000 being spent when we were cutting so steeply from our students and the budget. I also would respect the teacher support at 80% and the 100% of the principal support. And there was quite a bit of community support expressed. And so I would not have supported that decision. Thank you.
Next to go, Joe Erler.
Thank you. I think, I don't think I have a lot to add. I think Roger and Allison have both given very good rebuttals to this. I think that the amount that was spent on the buyout seems a little wasteful, and the timing wasn't the best timing. I think we could just leave it at that.
Thank you, Beverly Petrie.
Well, it seems a lot of us are on the same page on this. I also agree that it was the wrong time to do something like this. The administration had already been rather decimated. The director of finance had been put on administrative leave. The assistant superintendent had left for another position. And we were trying to prepare for a school year that was unlike any other. There was no pressing, pertinent, immediate need. If the reason was the school closings, that was 3 years ago. The teachers supported the superintendent. The administrators supported the superintendent. She had 1 year left on her contract. She should have been allowed to serve it out and then decide what to do about her. But it was just really fiscally irresponsible to do this.
Thank you. And finally, Tim Brewington. And Tim, can I ask you to speak up or move closer to your microphone?
Right. All right, how's that?
It's better. Could be better still though.
Okay, well, let's try this. I'll try to get a headset in between the next question. But I just want to add to what others have said. I think we need to acknowledge that there were many hurt feelings around that decision, that people in the community felt like that they were not heard. And I think that acknowledging that hurt so that we can restore trust in the community, so that we can hire a new superintendent. We need strong leadership in this district, but I think we need to acknowledge some of the hurt feelings that are in the district so that we can move forward.
Okay, anybody have anything further? Raise your hand and get a rebuttal. If not, we'll go to the next question, and the first person to answer will be Beverly Petrie. How would you define the role of school board member?
The school board member, I think the school board in general is an organization that sets the strategic vision and the strategic goals of the school district. And then the administration is the organization that carries it out. The superintendent is essentially the CEO of the organization, and it is his or her job to figure out how to execute the goals that the school board has set. The school board, I think, also serves as a bridge to the community. It should be engaged in constant communication with community members to not only find out what the community members think about their schools, but to celebrate and inform the community as to the amazing things that the school district is doing.
Thank you. Next is Tim Brewington.
Thank you. The role of the school board member is to be a liaison between the community and the administration to make sure that the administration understands the type of school and objectives that the public is asking for. The board members should also work with other board members to establish those set goals and work collaboratively with the board to make sure those goals are being met. And the board has a responsibility to oversee the finances of the district to make sure that we are able to provide a high quality education for our students.
Thank you. Next to go is Roger Zeman.
The school board and the school board members should be all about policies. The tone of the district, the goals, not to micromanage and not bring personal agenda items to the board. They should not act as payback for history. We need to leave the past behind and go forward and not assign blame. And I think school board members should get out to schools, visit students, visit faculty and principals on a regular basis, and find out the issues that the schools are facing. If we can have teachers and students be physically present during COVID, certainly board members should also be. Thank you.
Thank you. And next to go, Bill Gillis.
All right. Well, I think the role of a school board member is to reflect the goals and the vision of the community. And I think the most important step they take in doing that isn't hiring the superintendent. And I think that's true of just about any board, that the most important thing any board does is hire their chief executive, or in our case, the superintendent. But another really important role of the school board, and we've seen it throughout Minnesota, is that oversight, particularly financial oversight over the schools as well. Whether it was the scandal in Shakopee, where the superintendent was defrauding the district, or even in our own district where $5 million was being wasted on a property that can't even be used in the next school year. Financial oversight is incredibly important, and as well as reflecting the vision and goals of the community.
Thank you. And the next is Allison Sherman.
Yes, so the board's role is governance and oversight. I always simply state this as the board is defining the what, and the administration and the staff is identifying the how the work gets done. So it's very important for the board to synergize the feedback within the community in the work that they're doing to identify both short and long-term strategies. They need to work to educate the public. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And I've, for the last 2 years, I've tried to really do that. I've started writing meeting summaries and kind of bringing issues to community members who don't perhaps have the 5-6 hour board meetings to invest in watching. And I think that people are engaged, they're passionate, they want to see the board work together to make some really good things happen in the district.
Thank you. And finally, Joe Erler.
I agree that the most important thing that the school board can do is hire the superintendent, and we need to find a quality, high quality superintendent to be able to lead the district. I believe that the school board has to have that financial oversight, has to set the goals for the district, has to review the policies and make sure that we are keeping pace with society. I believe that, but I strongly believe that the most important thing is to find a good superintendent to be able to lead the district forward.
Okay, anyone have further comments or rebuttal? We'll go to the next question. And the first person to speak will be Alison Sherman. To what extent do you recognize inequities, inequalities in our district as related to students, programs, buildings, etc.? What are short and long-term ways to address it?
I think that over the summer, we were definitely, the community was reminded that there's work to be done for underserved populations in our district, for to make sure that we're equitably serving the needs of all our children. And that's really the goal for any board that takes over, is how are we going to work within our budget in a fiscally responsible way to provide our students with what they individually need to be able to succeed. And that's what I'm committed to doing. I think that some of the Black student letter that came out this summer and some of the stories, we need to listen. We need to find opportunities as a board to reach out and hear more, and really work with different advisory groups, with students, elevate that student voice, work with professional development with our teaching staff, work with our administration, just make it a priority every day to do better.
Thank you. Next to go is Tim Brewington.
Thank you. As a parent of a child with special needs who's a part of the special education program, I'm very concerned about the inequities in special education, that IEPs are not being met, and that we don't have enough special education teachers to support special education. It's expensive, but I think we really need to focus on supporting our special education. When we support special education, achievement overall will improve in our district, and I'm concerned about that.
Thank you. Next is Joe Erler.
Thank you. Speaking to my children about equity issues and their experience in the schools, I've heard some disturbing stories. I think that the school board needs to get in place policies that are going to be able to fix that. But as the question also kind of alluded to, there's differences in the buildings and in the ability for the students, to have equal opportunities in the different buildings. I think that, having reviewed the community design team plan, there seems to be some steps in there that would help move toward a more equitable distribution of assets for the students. And I believe that that's something that the school board should be looking at.
Thank you. Next to go is Roger Zeeman.
In a sense, Stillwater is facing is a microcosm of the same issues in our country. Of course, that's obvious. A certain section of our community has very little diversity and is not growing or stable at the very best. And another part of our district, the southern part, is growing with population, and a couple of the schools at least are overcrowded, and there needs to be a bond issue to realize those issues. I think a task force should be formed that addresses these issues and draws on the entire community to serve on that task force of diversity and systemic racism. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Bill Gillis.
Oh, you got it. Well, in terms of buildings, if you look around the district, we have some older facilities like Lake Elmo Elementary and Stonebridge, and say compared to Brookview, which is a brand new, beautiful building. And you can see the disparity. A number of really good teachers flocked to Brookview when it opened, and why not? It's a wonderful facility. And unfortunately, we can't have Brookviews throughout the district, but we can improve some of the facilities we have. And particularly in the short term, I think Lake Elmo needs to be renovated, and that needs to get in the next bond right away. In terms of programs where there's some equity issues, the Spanish immersion program is great. It's fantastic. It's in Lake Elmo, but there's no transportation to it. And while it's there to serve all the students in the district and all the Spanish-speaking students in the district too, unfortunately, not all the Spanish-speaking students in the district live in that Lake Elmo. And those students, plus the rest of the students of this district, don't have transportation. So in the short term, I would provide transportation for that program. I would also like to see that moved into Oak Park Elementary.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have something further to say?
I didn't get to answer this question.
I'm sorry, Beverly.
So the first thing that probably should be said is that over the last decade, the students of color in this district have grown from 6% to 21%. And the vast majority of that growth has been in the south part of the district. We do need to address that growth in terms of the buildings, because the buildings down south are just bursting at the seams. But also we need to think about how to do things programmatically. And actually one of the things that administration has done over the past few years is to implement the dual immersion program. Some people call it the Spanish immersion program at Lake Elmo Elementary. And the reason why this is so great is that it takes those students from Lake Elmo who are Spanish speaking, and it puts them with English-speaking students so they can both learn languages at the same time. I'm just not sure that moving that program to Oak Park would serve those Spanish-speaking students, because I don't know that they would have the way to get there.
Thank you. Did I skip anyone else? No? And any further comments from anyone? Okay, we'll go to the next question, and the first person to answer will be Roger Zeman. In your opinion,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
okay,
Go ahead.
in your opinion, are there useful lessons going forward from the Lake Elmo Transportation Garage experience?
I was afraid you were going to ask this. First of all, there needs to be better communication between a finance director, superintendent, and a school board. It's such a confusing mess right now. There's fingers being pointed at everybody, at anybody. It's not my fault, it's your fault, it's their fault. Certainly we've got to get beyond that. Right now, the new board, and hopefully there is a very good new board, doesn't keep lingering in the past and pointing fingers, but looks to the future. Let's get this behind us. Let's pay what is needed, what is legal, what is right. And the lessons learned going forward, as I said, competency in administration, but mainly communication between a board and the administration.
Thank you. Next to go is Bill Gillis.
Yeah. First, don't spend $5 million on property you can't use. We have plenty of needs in this district, and we could use that $5 million much better on something that's actually useful. Second, let's stop rushing the process. Let's stop trying to get things in under the wire. Let's stop trying to avoid oversight. In this case, we had one administrator and one board member who signed off on everything and tried to hide it from the rest of the board. We shouldn't be taking actions like that. We should involve the entire board and have full oversight, and we should embrace the oversight because that's how we avoid mistakes. We should also not blame or antagonize local governments, particularly the Lake Elmo City Council. And we should try to work with our partners in local government. And finally, we just need to be much more accountable with the money we're spending, and quit pursuing goals in secrecy from oversight and trying to avoid accountability.
Next to go, Beverly Petrie.
Well, actually, I will be grateful if we do finally get into that bus terminal, because it will be one of the best things that happened in this district in a long time. The reason why we wanted to buy the property in the first place is that we had been renting land to house the buses, and that's money that comes out of the annual budget every year. And it is, if we weren't paying that rent, we would be able to spend more money on teachers and instructional materials. And so that's why we wanted to buy that land in the first place. My understanding, I just checked into this a day or two ago, is that the connections are being made. The district has prepared the property and it's ready to go, and they are just waiting now for the connections to be made to the lot line, and that is supposed to be happening before the snow flies. So with luck, we will be able to be on that property very soon.
Thank you. Next is Allison Sherman.
Yes. I guess I'd like to say that I would look forward to learning more about this project. I think that it would behoove the board as a whole to have a public learning session with the administration so we could work as a team, which is what we all are. The board, the administration, the staff, the community, we're on the same side and we're all seeking the same goal, which is to further our students' academic progress. There are extreme advantages to owning a bus garage versus paying rent, and it frees up funds in our very stressed operating budget. And that operating budget is what serves our students directly in the classroom. So that project was approved by voters in the 2015 bond. And I would absolutely like to see the investigation that was completed to look at the project, for that to be shared with the public and discussed in a transparent fashion so we can take key learnings and move forward and do a better job.
Thank you. You ended exactly on time. And you're all wonderful about keeping time. So thank you from me. Next to go is Tim Brewington.
I think the overall lesson is that we need transparency in our contracts. I heard others talk about communication. When something changes, that needs to be communicated quickly to the public so that we are informed, because when we're not communicated with, then people create their own narratives, and that's how misinformation gets spread throughout the community, especially in a climate where there is distrust. So we need more transparency. I think that's the overall lesson learned here.
Okay, Joe Erler.
I would agree with several of the other people. Transparency is obviously a very big, important lesson out of this. However, the board did approve the purchase. There were meetings and discussion. It wasn't somebody going totally rogue and spending $5 million all on their own. The board did approve the purchase. I think that it's slightly wrong to say that the $5 million could have been spent for other things. My understanding is that if it wouldn't have been spent for this, it would have had to been spent for other things in that bond or returned to the taxpayers. And I agree that owning the land is probably better off than renting the land, because then that money isn't coming out of the general fund and is available for educational programs.
Anyone something further to say? We'll go to the next question, and the first to answer will be Joe Erler. One of our district's most valuable assets is our teachers. They are and have been working without contracts. What is your comment on the situation?
Well, obviously we need to have an honest and truthful negotiation with the teachers union and come to the best contract that we can with the teachers. Personally, I'm not hostile to unions, and I personally believe that you get what you pay for. So we need to make sure that we're not trying to shortchange the teachers. We need to pay the teachers fairly. Teachers are probably the most important part of the education system, so we have to make sure that we are investing properly in the teachers.
Thank you. Next is Allison Sherman.
Yes. Those conversations are ongoing. They're closed. I don't know the specifics about it, but what I can tell you is that I'd like to see conversations start a little bit earlier in the process. I think that would benefit everyone involved, both the board, the administration, and the teaching staff. Kind of building that relationship and having that ongoing dialogue. Clearly, our teachers are excellent, and for most people, they really are the district. So we want to take care of them to the best of our ability. We also have budgetary constraints, And we talk a lot about transparency. We need to really communicate with the public, communicate with our staff groups about what we can and cannot do. And again, it's building those relationships. We're on the same team. We have the same goals. Again, it's students and bettering our academic achievement in our programs for students. So thank you.
And the next to go is Bill Gillis.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, a contract would be in place. That would be good to have. And now the good news is in this district and even in all of Minnesota, our teachers are well compensated. I got to hand it to Alison Sherman. She pointed out that it costs the district about $180,000 per teacher, for 9 months of work. So that's great that we have some of the highest paid teachers in the state. I think they rank about 4th. So we're doing a good job there. We're attracting and paying for the best talent to be in this district. And frankly, that should continue. Now, I was the one candidate who didn't try to get the teachers union endorsement this time around. And it wasn't an easy decision to stay out of that contest. But the overriding reason to stay on the sidelines is that the union is negotiating their contract. And at some point I would be part of those negotiations and asked to approve the contract. And there's just simply no good answer to the parent of taxpayer who asked me, how can you protect my interests when you were endorsed and elected by the teachers union? So that was the main reason I stayed out, because I want to be unencumbered and negotiate in good faith going forward.
Thank you. Next to go is Beverly Petrie.
Well, as I've been talking to some teachers, they have raised this question about the contract. I really do not know the specifics. All of that happens in closed sessions, and I'm not quite sure if it's all school board members who are negotiating or just a couple of them. But I do think that they deserve to have some sort of a settled contract. We need to understand that, especially at this point in time when teachers are essentially reinventing how they teach students, that it's kind of disrespectful for us not to settle that contract. And because a settled contract signals to the students signals to the teachers that we do appreciate what they're doing.
Thank you. Next to go is Roger Zeeman.
I think that not having a contract and the deadline passed months ago speaks volumes to teachers and to the community of what a board thinks about their teachers. My understanding is they're not asking for the moon. And I disagree with Bill in that only 9 months work. Having been a teacher, principal, and school board member, it's a lot more than that. And unless you've been one, you probably don't understand or be married to one. So it's really bad not to have a contract that's settled. It's unprofessional. And it tells, again, the district and the community, you can just wait in line and we'll get to you eventually. And that's absolutely wrong.
Thank you. Next to go and final for this question, Tim Brewington.
Well, I come from a family of educators and teachers, and so I realize the sacrifices that teachers make. We are asking our teachers to do more now than I think ever before. Teachers are the heartbeat of the district. When I think about growing up in school, it's the teachers that I remember, and our teachers need a contract, and I think we should work towards getting that contract as soon as possible.
Anybody further comments? Okay, the next question, we'll start with Tim Brewington. Schools often have diversity activities to promote cultural awareness or competence rather than confronting racism more directly. How would you prioritize the well-being of BIPOC students over the discomfort of educators and families who may be reluctant to engage in anti-racist activities?
Thank you for this question. As a person of color, I know what it's like to be the only person who looks like me in a classroom and in an environment. And what we want most of all is to be heard, seen, and understood. And I think it's about listening. I work with the Multicultural Advisory Committee for Public Safety here in the city of Woodbury. And it's a lot of listening, sharing each other's experiences, learning how to relate to each other. And even when we don't understand, at least be willing to listen. There's something to be said about having a lived experience, speaking with individuals who have actually experienced it, and it's not just something they've picked up in the last few months. Thank you.
Joe Erler.
I think that empathy it would be a big part. We have to be able to understand and listen, as Tim said. We have to be able to listen to each other and understand one another. I think something that would go a long way would be to increase the number of teachers of color in the school district. But I know that that's not a solution that can happen overnight, seeing that there's a shortage of teachers in general, and there's a shortage of teachers of color to be able to bring them here. And how do we attract them to come to Stillwater? But I believe that we need to listen to each other, and we need to increase the representation at the teacher level to be able to make the conversation easier.
Thank you. Bill Gillis.
You know, earlier this summer, there was a series of tweets that came out detailing a number of racist incidents in the schools that involved students and staff and even teachers. There are clearly issues that need to be addressed in the schools. And my main takeaway from those tweets is that we need a new approach to discipline regarding racist incidents. Regarding discipline for incidents between the students, I believe we need to maintain a stance of mercy. We need to remember that they are still kids, and our ultimate goal is education, and to educate them that such behaviors are not acceptable. But for staff, teachers, and other adults, I think our discipline, it needs to lean towards justice. We should be far less tolerant of adults who commit these transgressions, and remember that adults are modeling behavior for the students, and that racist conduct will not be tolerated.
Thank you. Next to go is Roger Zeman.
One of the issues or the problems of the district is not being clear. I think the school board has to set the bar that racism is not acceptable, that it will not be tolerated among staff, among students, and among and with the community itself. The school board has to set the bar. The school board has to be very plain that we, the board, are not going to tolerate attitudes at school board meetings anywhere where racism is encouraged, or there's a dog whistle to racist in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison Sherman.
I think that as a potential board member, I would start with myself, and I would like to see the board start with itself as a collective and recognize that there needs to be training and development in leadership related to their own cultural competency. So I would really advocate for that work to start with the board, whoever gets elected. I think there's a lot of policy work. Policies have unintended consequences. And so I think really having a committee of BIPOC families, members, students, community members, teachers, advising the board as to how policies that they work on may have unintended consequences. I think professional development is huge. I mean, this is a very hard question to answer in a minute and a half. We could go on for a long time, but I think it starts with listening, understanding, relating to one another, and really just looking at it less as an achievement gap, but more as an opportunity gap that needs to be addressed on a number of different levels.
Thank you. Finally, we have Beverly Petrie.
This community has been majority white for a long time. You know, as I had mentioned earlier, there has been a tremendous increase in BIPOC students over the past decade. I guess I'm not entirely surprised that there isn't as much acceptance as we might wish to have. There needs to be a lot more discussion, a lot more. I know that in the past, the district has done programs within the schools involving the students, and there probably needs to be a lot more of that happening. And we need to be attacking this issue on a lot of different fronts. We need to be looking at it, you know, working on it at a board level. There has been a new cultural liaison that has been hired, and this is a fabulous step in the right direction. I would like to see this happening on a lot of different fronts over the coming years.
Any more comments? Okay, we'll go on, and this will have to be the last question because we're running out of time. And so the first to answer will be Roger Zeman. What do you hope to accomplish during your term?
World peace. That's a big question. What I hope to accomplish is to rededicate a school board to the needs of students, to make clear where the board stands on social issues, and again to make sure that the money we spend is used appropriately. In fact, I think that the board should review administrative salaries and roles in this very serious time, and to see what positions can be combined or perhaps redefined. And I also hope to have an operation levy passed soon. It's going to be needed. And then what do we do along with all the COVID expenditures? Thank you.
Next to go is Bill Gillis.
Well, the first thing I'd want to address is the reading instruction in the district. We're graduating 95% of our students, but only 70% of them are passing the proficiency exam. For our third grade goals of literacy, only 60% of our kids are getting there. My daughter is one of those. Too many of my neighbors are one of those. And if we need to change that, we must do better on the early childhood literacy. I also want to see us prepare and get ready for the expansion of the population in the Lake Elmo area. I'd love to see the next bond include a complete renovation of Lake Elmo Elementary and building a second Lake Elmo Elementary School in the southern part of that district. Finally, we need to celebrate, encourage, and embrace our community schools that we have here. We have 18 wonderful communities in this district, and we should be working with and embracing them and to move forward. But most of all, we need to get beyond the controversy and disunity that has impacted this district for far too long.
Thank you. Next to go is Tim Brewington.
Thank you. A couple of things I want to accomplish in my term. First, I want to look at policy from the perspective of who benefits from the policy versus who is burdened by the policy, looking at any implicit biases that may have some undesired outcomes. So I want to look at policy. I also want to bring the conversation about special education from the back of our minds to the front of our mind, to really focus on supporting special education. I also want us to get serious about closing the achievement gap in our district. Minnesota has one of the highest achievement gaps in the country. We're the first district in Minnesota, and I think we have an opportunity to lead the state in closing the achievement gap. Also, I'm very concerned about the condition of Lake Elmo and having enough room in the Brookview. And so those are the things that I will focus on.
Thank you. Next to go is Joe Erler.
I think the main thing that I would like to accomplish would be to hire a quality superintendent so that we can try to restore a balance between board governance and superintendent leading the district. Other than that, I believe that, you know, there's a lot of, the bonding issue would be a very important thing that needs to be done. Being able to try to implement some of the actions that the community design team identified would be important. But the overriding thing is definitely getting a quality superintendent and reestablishing a trust with the community and a balance between the board and the administration.
Thank you. Next to go is Beverly Petrie.
Well, there's a lot to do. We don't have a strategic plan right now. We need to hire an excellent superintendent. We have buildings that need attention. We have overcrowding in the south part of the district. And we have an operating levy that must be renewed in November of 2021. And if voters don't say yes to that, we'll have a fairly immediate $12 million hole in the budget. So there's a lot on the plate of the next school board that comes in next year. But perhaps most important is trying to regain the trust of the community. And I think that it's going to be important for whoever is on the board to reach out to all different kinds of groups in the community, no matter who that is, and try to convince them that what we're trying to do is build the schools and make them the best they can possibly be.
Thank you. And finally, Allison Sherman.
Yes, there is a lot to do. My son is, I mentioned my son earlier, he's in 11th grade and he has had 6 superintendents since he started in the district. I think that the hiring of a superintendent is critical. We need to hire really high achieving, successful districts have a longer tenure in the superintendent position. So I would think that that's something that is going to need to have community buy-in and representation on selecting committees from students to staff to community members in addition to the board. Obviously there is COVID-related issues, there are strategic planning issues, there are referendum issues, both bond and levy, that are critical. More importantly, I think that the board needs to refocus its energy on governance and oversight, and really providing that big picture vision for the district so that we can really give that direction to our staff and move forward from there.
Thank you. And that's it for questions. We will now turn to your closing statements, and they'll go in reverse alphabetical order. And that means that Roger Zeman will go first.
Again, world peace is my goal. First of all, I'm not a terribly modest person, so when I say this, don't be too offended, but this district needs an expert on the school board. I've been a school board member. I've been a teacher and principal for 35 plus years. This isn't my first rodeo. It's very important to elect a person who knows what they're doing and knows how to get it done. I'm that person. Somebody told me, Roger, you should keep saying it's time to elect an expert. I feel I am, and I'm unabashedly honest about that. And I so look forward to serving the school district and the children of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to go, Allison Sherman.
First of all, thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak to voters. There's nothing more important than our students. And I commit to being, in every decision that I make, I commit to being student focused, fact-based. We need to make decisions on data, not emotion. I commit to being collaborative with fellow board members, with community members from across the district, and with staff. We have expertise in our staff, and I think that I look forward to creating that vision and that overall strategy that's going to really serve students, and again, just really focusing on keeping our spending of limited financial resources in the classroom on students, because that's why we're all here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Beverly Petrie.
Well, if you elect me to the school board, there are two things you can expect from me. First is that I will make data-based decisions that are in the best interest of students, but within the limits of fiscal responsibility. And second, that I am going to listen carefully and make decisions based on what I hear. Some years ago, I lived in St. Paul, and our neighborhood was going to be impacted by a change to the roads near us. And so we invited Mayor George Latimer to come to our meeting and talk to us about this. And he came and he listened very intently to what we had to say. He asked really thoughtful questions. And then at the very end, he got up and told us in detail why he was not going to support our position. He left, and I thought, you know, that George Latimer, he's such a great guy. And the reason I said that is that he listened so carefully and intently. And then he was completely honest and unafraid to tell us what he thought. And that's the kind of school board member I aspire to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Gillis.
Well, again, thank you, Mary, for moderating the event tonight. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters, too. I really enjoyed this opportunity. I'm running for the Stillwater Area School Board because as a father of three, I'll have a kid in the school system for the next 16 years. I want to make sure that my kids and all of their classmates will receive the highest quality education possible. Many challenges face our district, but I believe that by working together, we can improve reading instruction. We can meet the challenges of a growing population in Lake Elmo. We can promote and support our community schools, and we can bring unity back to this district. Whether you are voting by mail tomorrow or showing up at the polls on November 3rd, I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Erler.
Again, thank you for this opportunity. I'm running for the school board because I saw a lot of discord in the district, and I believe that we need to settle things down and have a more measured tone with the school board. I believe that it would be very important to stay, you know, as some others have said, remain a conduit to the community to be able to listen to them. But I believe that we have to move past some of this discord that's been going on for the last several years and get back to focusing on the education of the students in the district.
And Tim Brewington.
I want to thank again the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight. I've enjoyed our discussion tonight. Stillwater Area Public Schools has its challenges, but we are still a great district, and I am proud to be a part of it and have children that are graduating from this district. We have a rich history, but our future is uncertain. We need to commit ourselves to working together to find the best solutions, because no one person has all of the answers. We should ask ourselves, what type of school do we need to have in our district to keep us competitive and continue our rich legacy as a district? We need to work together to make that a reality for our district. My commitment, if I am elected to the school board, is to work with everyone in the community to produce the best outcomes for all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. And so that ends our forum. I have just a couple of announcements. We will put all of our forums on our YouTube channel. You may see them up there by tomorrow. And you'll find links to the YouTube recordings for all of our forums on our website, www.lwv.wbla.org. And you can request an absentee ballot right now on the Secretary of State's website, www.mnvotes.org. If you need to register to vote or update your registration, you can do that online or when you go to vote. So thank you, candidates, for speaking to us and the citizens about the issues and for coming forward to run in the Stillwater district. Thank you to our volunteers and for viewers for watching and for your interest in becoming informed voters. We want you to make your vote heard in the general election by voting November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
You.